Let's start by creating the project folder, and I'm gonna call my project RSS RSS Live Traffic Report 1.0, and inside this folder I will create my HTML file called index.html. Then I am gonna need a CSS folder, I'm gonna need an images folder, and I'm gonna need a JavaScript folder just to organize everything nicely. In the CSS I'm gonna be using Sass as always, so I'm gonna go ahead and create a file called styles.scss, and this SCSS will obviously compile into a CSS file. And inside the JS folder I'm gonna create my scripts file. I'll call it script.js, and for the images I'm gonna go ahead and copy an image that I've already downloaded from Unsplash.com. So let's open this project in Visual Studio Code, and the way to do that is you can open Visual Studio Code and just drag your folder inside, and that should open the project on the left side of the screen. So the first thing we're gonna start with is the HTML. Let's start by writing the HTML, and I'm just gonna zoom in a little bit so you can see better. So maybe something like this would be okay. And so I've created my HTML, and I'm just gonna give it a name of RSS Live Traffic Rotator. Now we need to include our CSS file, which will be compiled as soon as I start the SCSS compiler in Visual Studio Code. Let me zoom out a little bit actually. Also, I will use the live server, so every time I save, the page refreshes for me. So let me start this. If you go back to my browser, we can see that I've got the blank page. Okay, the next thing we need to do is obviously include the styles.css, and let's do this. So I can do link CSS and find the CSS in my styles.css, and also I need to include my JavaScript file, which I will include at the bottom of my HTML. And for this we can just do script source equals JS script.js, and let's close the script tag as well. Now we can actually start by building the HTML elements for this project. As I said, I'm not going to spend too much time on the design, but it's essential that you see the HTML elements and how things will end up working later on in this tutorial. So let's create a div with the class of RSS Rotator, and basically I will be storing all the elements of the RSS Rotator in this div, and I will probably position this at the bottom of the screen. And inside this I want to have a title, so I'm going to create another div with the class of title, and the title will be traffic Rotator. And then I'm gonna need an unordered list, and for this unordered list I will give it an ID of item, and basically I will use this unordered list to insert the data inside here in the width, just like this. So RSS Rotator, and basically every single element will be inserted just like this. And just for the test, just to style things super quickly, I will add a few demo elements, and then I will remove them as soon as I'm done with the CSS. So let me move my Visual Studio Code to the right, and let's see the actual HTML page to the left, and I'm gonna close the Explorer so we can focus on the HTML and CSS. So let me open the CSS file here, styles.scss, and of course you can use just a normal CSS if you like. And in fact, as I said, I'm not going to be doing a lot of CSS. So let's start by changing the font, and I've already found the font that I like from Google Fonts, and you can go Google Fonts and find a font that you like, and in my case I'm just going to use Quicksand. And then I am thinking of setting a few colors as well in the variables, just in case I change my mind later on. But as I said, I'm not too fussed about the design of this project at this point. So let's do primary color, and the primary color will be 396362, and let's do a secondary color, and the secondary color will be 4B8E8D. And I was thinking of adding some light and dark text, but let's leave this for now and continue to save time. And the first thing I want to do is obviously reset some of the page margins. So let's do body and reset the margin to 0. I'm going to display this as flex, just so I can position the traffic rotator at the bottom super quickly without wasting any time. And I will put the height as 100 VH. The font family is obviously going to be the one that I chose above, and that is Quicksand, and that's sans serif. Okay. You can see that the font is working. I've reset the margins and all that. I can start by styling the RSS rotator, and for this I'm just gonna go ahead and do something like this: div with a class of RSS rotator, and inside here all I want to make sure is that the RSS rotator is 100% in width, and I need to align the RSS rotator at the bottom, so that will be flex end. As you can see, it's already at the bottom now, and I want to set a background color to be white, just because I'm thinking of adding an image above, just to make it look a little bit better, just to make things look a little bit more interesting. And let's do that now. Let's add the background image. By the way, you can skip this part with the CSS and just go to the JavaScript if you like. Let's find the image quickly. Okay, and I'm going to resize the background image as well. That would be background size, and I will put it as cover. Okay, this is a lot better, and I'm actually going to move the position a little bit. So background dash position, and the position can be 0 pixels from the left and 100 pixels minus 100 pixels from the top, which shows a few of the cars, some more of the image. And now we can concentrate on the actual RSS reader. Okay, so for the RSS rotator, let's now style the title. I can do, let's see if I can do the title in here. And for the title, what I will do is I'll add a little bit of padding of 20 pixels. The background color I want to set as the primary color, which is the green one that we set in here. The color of the text will be set to white. And I think I'm okay with this. I'm happy with that. The next thing I need to do is style the unordered list. Let's do that super quickly. And for this, I'm going to reset the list style to remove the bullet point of none. The height will be set to 300 pixels, and to create the scroll on the right side, I want to set that to be to overflow auto. So when there is more items, when the box is overflowing, we are gonna get the scroll on the right side. And to prove this, I can just copy some of the lists, paste them, and as you can see, the scroll is now appearing, which is what I want. Now let's reset some of the margins and paddings. Then for the list, inside for the list, I want to add some padding of 0 for the for the top and bottom, and left and right 20 pixels. Then I want to add a border, a separator, and that will be border bottom of 1 pixel solid. I just want a super grey color, something like CCC will do the job. And everything is looking good so far. Now let's remove the demo from the HTML, because we'll be adding the lists from JavaScript using JavaScript. So I can just do this, and we're actually now done with the HTML and CSS. So we can go to our JavaScript file now that we created earlier, close the Explorer, and we can start writing our application. The first thing I want to mention is that in this tutorial I will be using the Highway England RSS feed, because Highway England RSS, if you Google this, you should get this page, which is highwaysengland.co.uk/RSS feed. But of course you can use your own feed, and by the way, all these feeds are free to use, and you can make unlimited calls to the RSS feed, and obviously they are all categorized, which makes things a lot easier. And yes, basically you can just choose a region, and let me show you how they look. So this is how a normal RSS feed looks, is in the format of XML, and as you can see, it's very nicely ordered. And this one happens to be quite small actually. If I was to, let's go back and I will show you another one. For example, if we see all event, you will see we have a huge list of details, and in fact the browser is struggling to convert this into a pretty XML file. I will be using this, and what I've actually done, what I can do, let's see how many items we have here. We have, unfortunately, we only have 2 items here, so I've already copied one of them RSS feeds that had only a few items, but obviously not as many as this page. Just to make things a little bit easier, with this one we only have 2 items, which won't be a good demo. It will still work, but it just won't be a very good demo. So let me create the RSS feed, and I can do this in here. I will just add a new file, and what can we call it? Let's call it rss.xml, and inside this rss.xml I will paste some of the RSS that I've copied. And we can also see this under here. Let's copy this page and maybe do rss.xml. Okay, so if we look closely, you will see that the elements are grouped in items, and I'm mainly interested at the data in each item. So each item shows you a category, description, title, road, and a lot more details that we can use. And this is what I want to be concentrated on. Unfortunately, with this RSS feed, we actually have some more titles which are not inside the item. For example here, these are actually the main is the main title of the RSS feed, which could make things a little bit trickier. But what I want to do, and I will show you how, I want to ignore this. I don't want this title and description. I just want to concentrate on the items and not worry about anything else. So let's get going, and the first thing I'm going to do is, so to get the data from our rss.xml, we'll be using the fetch API, and by default the fetch API uses get method, so it makes things super simple for us. And basically fetch allows you to make network requests similar to XML HTTP requests, XHR. The main difference is that the fetch API uses promises, which enables a simpler and cleaner API. It's basically a lot simpler than the XML HTTP requests. Let's start by creating a function, and I'm gonna call this function load XML feed. And this will be an arrow function. Let's create our URL, a variable for URL, and I'll do as a constant URL is equals rss.xml. And now we can use the fetch API, which I just talked about. And to do this is actually fairly easy. So we can do fetch the URL, then get a response into text, and then we need to pass the data, and also now I will be using the DOM parser interface, which basically provides the ability to pass XML or HTML source code from a string into the DOM document. And to do this, we can do let parser.new. And also, by the way, make sure you research everything yourself as well to learn a little bit more, because I don't want to waste way too much time over explaining everything. So let's get going. XML parser.pass from string, and the string is the data, and we need to do application XML. Now to test whether we are getting the RSS feed, what we can do is do a quick console log, and we can do XML. And if we inspect the website elements by right click and inspect and go to console, we are not getting anything, and this is because we actually haven't run this function. We actually haven't triggered this function. And to do this, I'm going to be using an event listener, and basically let me show you. So document add event listener, and for this document add event listener, I'm going to use the DOM content loaded. Basically this event fires when the initial HTML document has been completely loaded and passed without waiting for style sheet images and subframes to finish loading. And this is why we'll be using that. And obviously now we need to trigger this function, and I will just copy the name and trigger function, excuse me, like this. Okay, so if we save now, you will see that we're getting the RSS document in here, and we can browse through it and have a look at each tag name. Now our next challenge is to get that data to display in here, and for this what I will do is I'm actually going to create another function now, and let's call this function something like display traffic list, and excuse me, what I have to do now is actually, as soon as the XML is loaded in here, I want to start this function and I want to pass the XML data. And to do this, I can use the function name in here and just pass the XML like this. And then I will get the XML property into, let's say, a variable called X. You can call it whatever you like. And now if I do a console.log of X, we should get exactly the same thing, the RSS feed in here. So which means our function is working and we can continue. Okay. The first thing I want to do is make sure that is select the unordered list so we can add elements inside it. And the unordered list has an ID of item. To select it with JavaScript, what we can do is let's create a quick variable of and we'll call it list, and we can do document.get element by ID, and the ID is obviously item. Now to select, let me console log this again, log X. Now to select the tag name of item, which is what we want, what we can do is do another variable, let item, let's call it item, and we can use the data, the XML data, which is stored in X. And to get the item, to select the item, what we can do is get element by tag name, and the tag name is obviously item again. I think I've overused item a little bit too much, but hopefully you're following along. And I think I most likely have a spelling mistake, so let's have a look. It's get element by tag name. Okay, if I save this, everything seems to be working. And I actually want to get the length of the item, and there are two ways of doing this. What I can do is, let's do another variable, that might be easier for now. Let item number. I want to make sure that we know how many items we have here, so we can loop through them and insert the details on our page. So what we can do is copy this, paste it, and at the end we can just do length. Okay, if I was to console log the length, the item number, we get 9 items, which is great. Now we need a way of displaying the data in here. To do this, I'm just going to do a quick for loop, and to do a for loop you just do for, and I'm going to do let I is equal 0, and I until I is smaller than item number, keep on multiplying I by 1. What I want to do is actually I want to create lists inside the URL, and to do this what I can do is I'll create a new variable called list. To create a new element, what you can do is document.create element, and the element I want to create is list, so I will use this in a second. I also want to add each list that we create, I want to add a class name, so we can make it easy to select later. Let's add it now, just in case. We can do list class name, and then we can just come up with a class name, something like list item. That would do. And now we need a way to actually insert the data. To do this, what I can do is use the create element, so list dot inner HTML, and for now I can just do RSS feed just to test things. And obviously you're not seeing anything because we need to actually append to the URL, and we selected the URL in here. So basically what we can do is list, use this variable which we selected the URL, okay, and we can do append child and we can just append this. So just like this. If I save, you will see that this we have the RSS feed 9 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 times, we have 9 times the RSS feed. Obviously we want to replace this with the information from here now. To do this, it's actually fairly easy. And what we can do is, there are a few ways of doing it, but I'll show you, I think, the easy way. And what I will do is, I can't remember what this was called exactly, but I will try to figure out after the video. But basically this allows you to write HTML and JavaScript a little bit easier than just adding stuff with the plus sign. So let me show you what I mean. Let's say in H3, I can get the, we need a squiggly bracket, and what I can do is use the item tag name, which is basically this in here, and because we want to loop through it for each item, we can put the I, and then what we have to do is we can actually save this and see what happens. So as you can see, this returns object element, which means we can access all the details with the dot notation, just like this. So let's do get elements by tag name, and the tag name that I want from the item, it's gonna be the title. And if I save this, let's see what happened. Object HTML collection, and this is because we need to select the first title, just like this. And also when we select the, where is it? When we select the first title of item, then what we can do is we can do insert, we can do inner HTML, and that should bring us the actual raw HTML of the first title inside each item, which is here. So as you can see, this was fairly easy, and now if I shrink this down a little bit, we can do exactly the same thing with the description, and I'm just gonna wrap the description in a paragraph instead of H3 because I want it to look smaller. And as you can see, we're getting the description straight away. And let's check whether, I just wanted to check whether this information it's different, but if I'm honest, it all looks a little bit the same to me, so I don't know whether to go and grab another item. Let's have a look quickly. So maybe I've already selected one from here. Let's see how many items he has, and this looks decent actually. It's the unplanned events. Let's copy this one so we don't waste any more time, and let's replace the RSS.xml from here to a real live one. So okay, at least now we're getting different titles, different descriptions, and so on, so you can see that this is a real data, and it's coming from this website. Okay, this is great. Unfortunately, there is a lot of items in here, so when we do the animation it will take a little while, but maybe we can just speed it up for the testing. Okay, let's carry on now. The next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that if there is no items inside the RSS feed, I want to display a message of something like no planned roadworks or whatever. So let's do that super quickly. And I can do this just above the for loop in here. So what I can do is if item number is equals 0, let's display some sort of a message, and I can use the list variable that we selected earlier, this one. I'll do inner HTML just like below, and I will insert a list with h3. Let's close the list, and I will just add a message of no plant roadworks. So obviously we have a lot of roadworks in here, so we're not gonna get this message just yet. But what I can do is I can actually go to my RSS feed. Let's see, and what I'll do is I'm actually gonna delete some of the items just so we can test it. I don't want to delete. Okay, hopefully this is everything. So now I can go to the JavaScript and quickly replace this to rss.xml. Save this. I will move my thing to the right, and as you can see, there is no plant roadworks because in the RSS XML we have no items. So let me change this back to something that has a lot of items and we can work with. We've created the if statement, but I want to add the wrap the for loop in an else. So if there is items, then we want to do the for loop. It makes sense to do that. It makes things a little bit more structured as well. And so far we're good. What I want to do next is start working with the animation. So basically what I want to do is when the document is opened, to wait a little bit, remove the first heading, then remove the next one, then remove the next one, then remove the next one, and so on. And when it comes to the bottom one, I want our application to actually go and check whether there is new traffic. And the reason I'm doing this instead of just rotating the same information is because with traffic there is always news that come up every single minute, and I just want my traffic rotator to be always up to date. So let's do that super quickly. I'm gonna create another function, and let's call this something like start animation. And what I'm gonna do is, okay, so obviously when we list the items from this function, let me zoom out a little bit. Hopefully you'll be able to see a little bit more. But when we display the items, then I want to start the start animating function a few seconds later, pass the items as well, so we can then see how many items we have, and you can remove them one by one. And what we can do is let's set timeout function. For the timeout function, I'm gonna do something like, I believe this is 7 seconds. And so basically 7 seconds, let's start the animation. And when we start the animation, I want to pass the item data into here. And I will actually grab the item data with another variable. Let's call it X again, but you can call it whatever you like, which is cool. What we can do to test this is obviously we can do console log, and let's see the inspector to see if we have any errors. But everything seems good, to be fair. So console.log, let's log the X and see whether we get anything. So after 7 seconds we should get something in here. Yes, okay, yeah. So after 7 seconds we actually got the full list of items. Maybe we just need the number. Yeah, we could do with just the number, but it's fine for now. Let's carry on. Remember when I added the class item list to each individual list in here? If I inspect it, you will see that each list has the list item. I'm going to use this now to actually remove each item one by one. So let's do that now. And what I can do is let's create a new variable, list item, and we need the document get elements, because it's a class, elements by class name, and obviously the class name is list item, which we set up here. Let's console log the x dot length. which I'm sure it'll work. And what I have to do now is actually I want to create a loop that with the set timeout of a few seconds, so it removes each item one by one after a few seconds. So what we can do is let's create another for loop with for loop let I is equals 0, I is less than x dot length, and I plus plus, and let's do another set timeout function. And this time I might do something like 3 seconds, and basically I want every time this runs, this timeout runs, I want it to times that by the second, so we have a smoother animation hopefully. So what we can do now is let's use the list item dot, because this is basically get elements by class name. Because this acts as an object, I wanna make sure that we always selecting the first object, and to do this we just do the brackets and 0, which will select always the first object, and then we can simply do remove, which should literally remove the list for us. If I save this, hopefully if I highlight this, in a few seconds this should disappear. As you can see, the list disappeared, and now every 3 seconds the other list will disappear until they run out, and then I want to check whether there is any more new information coming in and just reload the list again. To do this, to do the reloading, what I can do is inside the set timeout, I can actually check if I is equals the x dot length, because the x dot length will be always one number higher than I can just do -1. Now that all the items are gone, basically I want to make sure that this function of load XML feed is run again. And what I can do is, just for testing purposes, I will do a console.log, and let's do something like new loading new data and save. So if we go to the console, and can I close this? I wonder. You will see how each element is slowly disappearing. I might have to speed this one up because it's taking a while, but I don't have a smaller RSS XML document, so it's only going to take a few seconds. But as you can see, we're almost done now. If we expect the elements, there are only 3 left, and now at the end we should hopefully get the loading new data message. And as you can see, we got the loading new data message. There's still 16 items, and we just got the latest feed from the RSS from the highweightsengland.co.uk, which is awesome. So technically this application will work standalone now. We don't have to refresh it or anything like that. It will just keep on checking and checking and so on, which leads me to the next point. The last thing is, if there is no planned works, obviously at the moment the application is just going to stop, and that's it. It will never bring back any new data, and we need to fix this. And to do this, we can do another set timeout inside here. So set timeout function, let's close this, and let's say we want to check if there is no planned roadworks or whatever. We want to maybe, I don't know, let's say we want to check every 7 seconds or something like this. Maybe you can add as more, maybe a minute or whatever. It's up to you. And what I can do again is just reload this, so it goes and fetches the new data. Click it. And what I will do is do another console.log, and if the item is again 0, what we can do is just say no new data ... and let's do that. And let me remove all those console logs that we have, just so things a little bit, okay, things look a little bit better. Save this and let's inspect everything. And obviously we're not gonna get this now because there is a lot of data coming up, but let's change this to the RSS .xml, which I created, where there is no planned roadworks. And let's wait a few seconds and see whether we get no new data. Of course there is no new data. So to prove the point, I could potentially just add let's say 2 items into the RSS feed here. And let's go back to the page. I think the page might refresh, which defeats the object, but let's try anyway. So if I add 2 items and save, yes, I think the page was refreshed when I saved because I've got the live reload. But everything seems to be working well. And also for the fetch, if you want to catch any errors, you can do .catch and do that. So as you can see, everything is working well. And that's everything from this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I hope you learned something. It would have been nice if we did some animations, but I didn't want this tutorial to go for far too long. Let me know if you want to see any more tutorials like this. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like the video. Comment below if you have any questions. Please subscribe to my channel as it will help me a lot. And that's everything from me. As always, my name is Raddy and you're watching my channel, Raddy the Brand. See you next time.